Hello there, Nat Edwards with you, and this week it's Riley Beveridge out and the draft guru himself is here. Welcome to you, Cal Toomey.
Hello, Nat Edwards. How are you?
I'm going well. It's great to have you in.
Glad to be here. I've been waiting for a call up. Riley's done a great job.
He has, but you're in today, and today we'll be keeping it simple thanks to AHM Health Insurance as we cast our minds forward and take a little bit of a look at the draft and the next generation of stars, which is really exciting. And I guess, Cal, we find ourselves in a really weird situation. It's a strange year. The NAB AFL draft is usually at the end of November, but with the season and finals to push deep into October and potentially November, we're a bit of a loss with what's happening with the draft. So fill us in.
Well, it's happening, and that's
good.
the first thing to know, because Gillon McLachlan now several times has confirmed there will be a draft, and that makes sense because you can't have a trade period without a draft, because you need to have draft picks to be able to trade that. So they obviously will have that draft. When it actually is a talking point, because there's so much uncertainty about when the season ends. There's also the issue of exams, because Victorian school kids usually don't finish their exams until the end of November. Because of everything this year, that's been pushed back a little bit. So I'd expect the draft to be held in the second or third week of December this year. They also have the possibility to do it early next year if they have to, but I think mid-December this year is most likely. Look, there's been a huge effect on the draft landscape because of COVID-19, unfortunately. At the start of this period, obviously all the games were put off, the season was suspended across the country. That meant that jobs for recruiters and list managers were put on hold. A lot of them across the competition were stood down. Generally, those list managers and recruiting managers are back on deck now, but what it means for the future, we'll have to wait and see. But certainly there's been wide-ranging effects of this COVID-19 pandemic on the draft landscape.
So that brings me to the actual art of recruiting, and generally you yourself find yourself at under-18s games every weekend, but there hasn't been any footy on for you to watch. So when will the NAB League start? Because that's one of the biggest competitions that a lot of draft prospects are actually drafted from, and how will it be structured?
Well, the NAB League will start in August, on August 22. It'll have a 6-week season, so it'll be split into two conferences.
Okay.
So the Metro teams and then the country teams will play for 5 weeks, and basically the top of one conference and the top of the other conference will play off in the 6th week, and the other teams will play off below that as well. So they'll get 6 games in, which is a start. It's
better than nothing.
It's not ideal, obviously, but it's a start, and they had some fears they might not get some games out at all. So hopefully that can go ahead as planned late in August. There's certainly some other competitions as well. We'll talk about the NAB League because it supplies more than 50% of the draft pool every year. So that clearly is the biggest under-18 competition in the country. But draft prospects around in South Australia actually played last weekend for the first time, so they're getting out and getting a bit of a run around. In WA as well, there's plenty of opportunities for those prospects to get a run too. Queensland and New South Wales are a little bit different. There's some more challenges in terms of their competitions, given the NEFL has been shut down for this season. But school competitions too, particularly APS competitions in Victoria, which is the leading private school competition there, and features some highly talented players this year, will begin, or is scheduled to begin, late in July. So there is an opportunity for these players to impress. It's obviously less of an opportunity than usual, but if they can still get in some of these 3 to 5 to 8 game seasons, then it at least leaves the recruiters with something to look for. And of course, it's worth acknowledging too that the NAB League girls season will start on September 5 and continue after playing a couple of rounds earlier in the year. So that's good news there.
Now, one of the highlights of the season this year has been Matt Rowell.
Rowell.
We've been talking a lot about this kid that tucks his jumper in.
It's amazing. We talked about him all year last year, Nat, and he's doing exactly everything that we spoke about.
I know, it's amazing. So last year's #1 draft pick, as we know, he's transitioned so seamlessly into the AFL though, and is doing some amazing things at the Suns. And as you say, we knew for years out that he was going to be the best in his age group. So who's the next Matt Rowell? Who is shaping as this year's #1 draft pick?
Matt Rowell was the next Sam Walsh. Sam Walsh was the next. I can't remember. Can't go back that far. But yeah, this year's #1 pick, if I was calling it right now, would be Jamarra Ugle-Hagan. He is a key forward from the Oakleigh Chargers, formerly from the North Ballarat region, so has moved up to Melbourne. He's boarding at Scotch College, where he'll play some footy soon, hopefully. He's a key forward, as I mentioned, 194 centimetres. But what I love about him, Nat, is his athleticism. We saw that at the NAB League testing day earlier this year in March. His vertical jump with 93 centimetres, massive. 20-metre sprint, 2.94 seconds.
That's about as quick as you do it, isn't it?
Nearly as quick. So that's elite for a guy his size. Yo-Yo was, and that's the beat test in new terms, was 21-3, which is about the same level as Matt Rowell did last year. So he kicked 24 goals in 9 NAB League games last year.
Amazing.
It's no surprise that he's had comparisons to Lance Franklin as a young buddy. So and he plays in a very similar fashion. He's very athletic, a big long left footer. So a lot to like about Jamarra Ugle-Hagan.
So if the season was to finish right now, as it stands, the Crows would have the #1 draft pick, but they actually wouldn't get Jamarra. Explain to us why.
Well, they can try, but they won't get him. They can put a bid on. So he's tied to the Dogs through their Next Generation Academy. So he's been a part of that region, and as a player of Indigenous background, the Western Bulldogs, as part of that Next Generation Academy region, get first access to Jamarra Ugle-Hagan. And they've already got him slotted into their centre-half forward line, or maybe even at full forward for next year, because he'll be ready to play next year. So it's well and truly a sealed deal that he'll end up with the Bulldogs. I'm not sure if they'll bid pick 1 on him. I'm not sure if it'll come by any club being bid at pick 1 for him. But if it does, the Bulldogs will straight away match that. There are some other players in the mix, though, for that top spot, if it is the Crows or if it is anyone else who ends up with that #1 position, because Riley Thilthorpe is another prospect. He's another tall prospect, a key forward and key defender from South Australia who could be right in the mix if the Crows do end up with it. And also Denver Granger Barras. So
it's the best name.
We've had some good names right at the top there. A couple
Amazing.
of double barrels and Riley Thilthorpe as well. But Denver Granger Barras was a star last year for WA at under 18 level. He's a key defender, very competitive, good mark overhead, and you'd have to think that the clubs with the early picks will really consider him.
What about the long-lasting effects that COVID-19 will have on the draft? There's been a lot of talk about raising the draft age. That comes up nearly every year. What about the academies in that future? Because we know that across the whole AFL industry, there are going to have to be cuts made.
Yeah, there'll be some significant changes, and the AFL's rolling through them at the moment, what the future of recruiting and also the draft pool looks like. I think we can all but rule out a draft age change. If anything shows that it should stay the same, it's Matt Rowell coming in and playing like he has.
Thank you,
so
Matt.
He's done a good job there. But look, that has been discussed. I don't think it's going to happen, though, because there's just too many other structural things that will have to happen for that to be in place. And also, there is the reality that, particularly in Victoria as well, that under 18 competitions could be moved to under 19 competitions, under 16 competitions could be moved to under 17s competitions, but still remain the draft age at 18. So it would just allow these players who do develop a little bit later, or some players who might want to focus on their schooling at under 18 level, to go and have another crack at it at under 19 level and have more opportunities like that. So the academy situation is in flux too. There's a lot of discussion around next generation academies and how they might be shaped in the future. So that will be discussed, but I don't think there'll be considerable change to this year's draft because it's running out of time for that much change. It's only 6 months away.
Yep. So there you have it. Footy made simple thanks to AHM Health Insurance. Great to have you on, Cal.
It's nice to be here, Nat.
For more draft news, make sure you check out our podcast, Road to the Draft. In the meantime, keep clicking back to afl.com.au and the AFL Live official app for the rest of your footy fix.